Everybody, it's Professor Kishbaugh. This week I want to go over a couple things on strategy and planning. I just did a mini lecture for my live online class, so I thought I'd do just a short lecture here to help you out if you have any questions with strategic planning. You're going to write a strategic paper, your strategic brief this week. There's a video in my courses in Module 3, and it goes over just what strategy is in general, and then you're going to write a one-page paper on that. So let me just give you just a brief mini lecture here for those of you who might be interested in learning a little bit more about strategic planning. So basically, the development process of planning, basically step number one is you develop the plan, define your mission and your vision statement for your organization, and then that's where you're going to start setting your goals from there. So from there you're going to go ahead and translate the plan, and this is where you're going to start delving into the actual tactical goals that need to happen. What needs to happen for us to be able to execute this plan. This is where you're going to start defining maybe a strategy map, put together a strategy map, talk about a contingency plan, maybe a couple of scenarios of what the plan will look like as it's moving forward. And then when you move into step 3, that's where you're going to start putting the measures and the targets. What are we going to measure? How are we going to measure the success of this particular strategic plan? Okay, that's where you'll set your stretch goals. That's right out of your chapter on strategic planning. And then crisis planning can fall into there, or something we call risk management. Then you're going to go ahead and execute the plan. And you can use the management by objectives method, which some of you are very familiar with. That's in your text as well. And you can use a performance dashboard, which I'm going to show you very quickly. Okay? Or you can also decentralize then the responsibility. Who's going to do what? That's delegation. We don't get a lot into delegation in this particular course, but it's definitely important to understand that when you're executing your plans that you do have some delegation. Okay? And then probably the most important part of the strategy and planning process is monitoring and learning from the actual decisions that were made and what happened as a result of this process. Many times we don't take a look at the results of our planning, and we just keep making the same mistakes over and over again. So it's really important for you to monitor and evaluate the process that you just went through so that you can see what's next. And you can see these arrows continue to move in this, because from learning about what you need to change moves you back into your next plan. Okay, so what's your next plan of action? And remember, strategic planning starts at the highest level. For next year, our organization wants to increase sales by 25%. That's a big strategic goal, okay? Our organization wants to increase our workforce by 10%. Okay, so it starts with a very large goal. And then as you break down the plan, put it into manageable tasks, get the operation on board, put your execution ideas together, then that's when you're moving that plan forward. Okay, so planning is fundamental. Okay, it's very important. How do you plan for an undefined future? Obviously no plan is perfect, but without the plans and your goals, your organization will just flounder. And we talk about decision making very briefly, but in the decision making process, sometimes the most important thing is actually making the decision and moving forward the execution than the actual strategic part. Okay, so the goal is a desired future that states the organization attempts to realize that the plan is a blueprint. Okay, so we have the blueprint for the goal achievement. How are we going to allocate our resources? How are we going to stay on schedule? How are we going to develop these tasks to get the job done? Okay, here's just a basic level of where these this whole idea of strategic planning fits in the organization. Again, it comes from the mission statement, which is usually developed by the C-suite, by the corporate leaders, maybe the board of directors, and all of the CEO and the CFO and all those that are at the executive level. Okay, and then the strategic plans that come from that are also going to be the CEOs, the executive leadership. Okay, tactical plans then fall more towards the middle management, so we're going to put that burden on the supervisor management. Okay, we're going to ask them to take hold of the major functions on how those are going to get spread out to the company, and basically we're going to allow them to do what they need to do to get the tasks complete. And at the lower management level, then these are going to be more of the operational goals, some operational plans that need to take place at the lower level. This is going to be a greater amount of people who are going to have their hands on these tasks, and we're going to make sure that the tasks are dispersed evenly and fairly so that we can get our goals done. Okay, and then basically strategic management, the decisions and actions that are used to execute these strategies. And I can't talk about how important it is to execute your strategies and to keep track of that. What did we do this time around? And what can we do differently or better the next time around? So it's important to not only keep track of what you're doing, but again, like we mentioned in the first part, you need to be able to evaluate that, okay, between the organization and the environment. And we push the environment in this management course. The textbook and the material really stresses the importance of the external environment. And it's really important because that's going to be the part of the business that you cannot control. Your external environment are the things that are going on outside of your organization that you can't control. So the difference then between formulating a strategy and executing the strategy, coming up with that strategic plan, and then using your management and organizational tools to actually execute that plan and make sure it happens. And like we said, tracking the results. Years ago, this is Coach John McKay from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was the first coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when they came into the Bucs 1986, I believe. And basically, the team was so bad, and they just were terrible. They couldn't win any games. They were just absolutely horrible. And one of the reporters stopped Coach McKay after one of the games, and he said, "Hey, Coach, how do you feel about your team's execution?" And he said, "I'm all for it." Execution? Okay, it's kind of funny. It was funny at the time. The Bucks were so bad. Okay, so I'm just kind of trying to make a little light of the fact that execution is probably going to be the difference between teams that make it in pro sports and businesses that make it in life. So it's thinking long term. Okay, it's thinking that if your long term goals are matching the things that you need to accomplish, then your performance is going to shine and you'll have financial success in your organization. So right now, like I said, today's environment requires that everyone think strategically. Everyone has this idea that we know where we'd like our organization to be, okay? And then the execution is going to be how our management team makes it happen. This is the strategic management process. This is right out of your textbook, okay? And it basically shows you that the SWOT analysis that we're familiar with will take a look at the environmental features, okay? The factors that are outside of the organization. The SW, that refers to the strengths and weaknesses within the internal environment. And down here it talks about core competencies, value creation, the things that your organization are already doing well, the strengths, okay? And looking at the weaknesses. What is our organization not doing well? So the strength and the weaknesses are going to be the things that the organization does internally. And the opportunities and threats, the O and the T, are the external environment and the things that we do not control. So we have to be real careful. We have to include the things that are driving risk, the things that are hurting our organization. We need to be aware of them and to see if we can develop new strategies. So from this SWOT analysis, we'll look at the goals, we'll look at the strategies, we'll formulate the strategy. What are we doing on the corporate level? What are we doing for our business suppliers and our business buyers and suppliers? And then from a functional level, what are the people that we need to carry this forward? What does management need to do to move this process forward? And then we execute the strategy. It's going to change leadership. We're going to have to look at structure, what kind of people, human resources, and what kind of communication systems are in place to carry this process through. And again, you'll see that these arrows are the result of, they just keep moving in a cyclical process to show you that we are continuing to make changes and progress in the strategic management process. So it's coming up with that mission and that vision, coming up then with the goal, okay, from that, How are we going to take those goals, turn them into tasks, and make people execute those tasks? So management, we have the tasks lined out. Leadership, we're going to meet people to move those tasks forward. And probably the most important part too is looking at some kind of performance track or performance grid that will help us measure that process. Some of the reasons and factors that contribute to the failure of strategic execution are going to be employee resistance is going to be number one. And when we get to the organizational module, which is next, we're going to talk about change. Your discussion question is about resistance to change, because that's the number one reasons why we do fail when we execute our strategies. And it could be an inadequate budget. Okay, other barriers could be lack of human resources, lack of the skilled employees to carry out the execution, lack of management. Okay, but probably the two biggest ones, and I would say that management doesn't accept the new direction. I would say that these are both very similar. This resistance to change and a resistance to supporting new change. They go hand in hand. Okay, you can see that makes up what, 40, 70 something percent. Okay, so thank you so much.